Yeah, okay, cool.
Yes.
All right, so I think we can start. We have Lakshmi Murthy, who is a president of Jatan Sansthan in India. She has worked a lot in terms of menstrual health in India, and she has done a lot of works on doing grassroots practices on menstrual hygiene practices and building communities across gender. She also made a lot of design materials that are copyleft and nurturing feminist space in India. And she's going to talk about where social communication, ecological practice, and grassroots meet the menstrual health landscape of rural India. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks to everyone who's here. Thank you, Mary and Priya, for organizing so many things for us while we were here. We truly had a great time. Nadia, thank you. So it's been wonderful. And yeah, so let's just start. And I hope that, we have a good 1 hour to, trash things out. So you will have to forgive me for taking you back many years because it sort of sets the context for me. And then, it's easy to understand where we've reached and how we reached. So as the title slide is suggesting, I work in the intersection of social communication, ecological practice, and grassroots. And I try to share with you the menstrual health scenario of India as it's been for some time and what it is currently. And then, let's just take the discussion ahead from there. So, of course, that's the map of India. And largely, I have worked in the western part of India, which is Rajasthan, but I've also worked in pan-India. Northeast of India is also a very kind of different geography, different cultural context. So we've done a few projects there as well. So without much ado, I will just zoom forward. And then my opening remarks will be menstruation is very different from all the other body expulsions. Like, for example, you take tears or you take sweat or you take, any other body expulsion. Somehow when it's menstrual discharge, there are many things that connect with it. So it could be social, it could be environmental. So we'll see that as we go along. So if you're looking at rural menstruators, where do young rural menstruators learn about menstruation? Who tells them what to do? Where do they get the materials to manage? So these are some of the things I'll share with you. So really speaking, a rural menstruator rarely learns anything at school. Even an urban menstruator may not learn everything completely at school because there is a chapter in the biology textbook, and then you learn about your periods and you learn about a few things, and then subsequently there is no further information that comes in. For a rural menstruator, a sister-in-law will tell you how to manage when she gets her first period. Typically, she will not hear it from the mother. Culturally, the mother will not speak to the young girl and alert her to what to expect. So these are some of the things we work with. And there is, of course, silence around men. We don't speak openly in front of men, of course, not in front of a brother. A lot of this is changing, but this is what we began working with. And if you looked at what are the devices that were used some years ago, I will just take you through that as well. And typically, if you look at it, it's social, it's a lot about practice, and it's a lot about infrastructure. So I just go back and forth. So there's a lot of shame, stigma associated with menstrual blood, associated with how there's a whole set of norms. How should you behave when you get when you have your period? Don't go to where the gods are kept, where the gods' figures are kept. Don't touch the holy books. Don't touch your husband. Don't sleep with your husband. There are so many. Don't sleep. Sleep on a gunny sack on the floor. There are plenty of these things that are instructed. There are plenty of things that are told to you when you start. And of course, there is a lot of peer pressure about do this and do that. And myths and beliefs, if you look at myths and beliefs, I've highlighted that in red because that really governs many of the things that we do. For example, if you wash your menstrual cloth and hang it out openly, and if a man sees it, it's believed the man will go blind. So because of that belief, you would put a larger piece of clothing on your menstrual cloth, on the clothesline. You would hang your menstrual cloth and put a larger piece of clothing on it, and then net what happens is that there's no sun reaching your menstrual cloth, and so that can create potentially a issue. Or you would use a dark colored cloth. If you use a dark colored cloth, you can't see the stains, so men won't see the stains. So it just, that's how it sort of goes. Like for example, pickling mangoes or lime is a seasonal activity. So at that time, if an adolescent girl is very involved in helping with making pickles, and we have something called papad. Papad is like a tortilla. It's a dried round tortilla made of many, cereals or rice.
Or papadam. Papadam.
Yeah, papadam. Okay, so that's an activity that you can't participate in when you have your menstrual cycle. Because why? Because the pickles will catch fungus, or because the papads will catch fungus. So, it's a lot of things that one has to look at when we start working in this area. For example, attire. In the morning session, we also spoke a little about attire, so I just detailed it a little further. Underwear usage was very uncommon 30, 35 years ago. It's more common now, and part of the reason why it sort of came into practice, because availability was there. You had roads improved, so we had markets improved. So, and there was exposure. So you have now a lot of girls, and a lot of young women wearing an underwear, which wasn't the case when we started working. And when you look at say this picture, it's just a group of adolescent girls going out, to urinate or going out to defecate. This scenario has changed somewhat, because now many houses have latrines, as opposed to even 10 years ago. You would find a lot of homes not having a latrine. So it was common for girls to go out together in groups, and going out in a group was a community thing. It was safety. It was safety from snake bites, or any other creature that would, scorpions, whatever. And of course, there are also drunk men. So let me not go there. So there are all these other factors that come into play. And then when you return home, you would return home to a space like what I'm showing you, where you would wash your clothes, you would probably wash your utensils even there. So really speaking, a menstrual cloth is often not washed at home, or typically it would be washed in the field where there's a water source, or somewhere a little private. So really speaking, infrastructure also doesn't support a hygienic way to manage your menstruation. So I already shared with you how you would, put a larger piece of clothing on your menstrual cloth. This is one way of doing that. One way that is done. And where is a menstrual cloth stored? Often you would, after your period, you would wash your cloth and you would just fold it and keep it in the cow dung shed, because that's where men don't come. Because the cow dung is something that cow dung and cow dung management is completely what women will do. Cow patties do you want me to elaborate on the cow patty, or? Yeah. So it's used for cooking, it's used for so many things. So that's where you would store your cow dung, and that's where you would also store your menstrual cloth. So it'll be safe there, because no men can see it. And so a typical sequence like this, if you're looking at a typical menstrual management sequence where you enter a private space and you exit a private space after you've changed your menstrual product, really speaking, at every point there's a little bit of violation that is happening when you don't have the facilities. Mm-hmm. So just looking back a little bit, if we looked at say 99, where really it was a time I had, I was a young designer at that time with probably about 8 years experience behind me. I'll just interject a little bit here. Thank you, Dipti, for coming. Dipti is a friend who studied in the same design school as I did at Ahmedabad in India. And she said she'd come and hold my hand as I speak today. So we spoke a little bit in the morning about some of these. So a cloth harvested from old garments was what we already discussed in the morning. Then it's common to crush newspaper and put it in a little handkerchief kind of square cloth, a rectangular piece of cloth, and you would wear that as your absorbent. And in the western part of Rajasthan, the state where I work, where you have very fine sand in an area called Jaisalmer, you would make a little bag and you would put sand in the bag, and then that would be your pad. The sand as such is very fine and won't cause any any health issue. But, the bag and the sand and the heavy nature of the pad that you would make, those might cause abrasion and, so there are pros and cons of many of these things which I've listed. Menstrual hut, we spoke a little bit again in the morning. It still exists. You would still isolate yourself, and now you would, it may not be a menstrual hut, but you would isolate yourself within your home. Within your home, there might be a room earmarked for when you have your period. That's where you go. Don't come into the kitchen. Don't touch the water pot. Don't cook. You stay there. And then gradually, as time moved on, bandage pads, as we call them, I have a sample here, which again I showed some people in the morning. So this was what we used when we were young, and like I said in the morning, we would literally be walking like ducks because it was so thick. Mm-hmm. And gradually, the pad technology changed over time, and then we had belted pads. So this was the scenario around '99, and of course the pads, the disposable pads, were the privilege of those who could afford it, and those who could access it. So then what were we communicating in this scenario? We were looking at breaking silence. We were looking at communicating for science of menstruation, looking at logical practices, body literacy. Body mapping was what we would call it then, but now a lot of people call it body literacy. I guess it's more or less one and the same thing. And how to manage your periods in a hygienic way. So a lot of NGOs came into this scenario at that time. So two were of significance. One was an NGO called Sahyog in '99, and they were working in North India, and they were getting women. Their agenda was, let's get women out of the isolation. Let's get them to come into mainstream. So they looked at ash as an absorbent. So this was and you with doctors on their team. So they taught girls and women how to make a pad using ash and cloth, because up to then women and girls in that area were isolating themselves into a separate room. So simultaneously at that time, I had a fellowship from the MacArthur Foundation, and I was looking at can I give young people an option? And so the pad that I shared with you in the morning was one of the things that we had developed. And again, my model was learn how to stitch your own cloth pad and make it out of your old clothes. So I'll share with you one of the oldest, I kept it out and now here we are. For trainers, it was very difficult. This is a very, very old sample, and it's really 25 years old now, but I brought it to show you anyway. It's very difficult for a trainer to demonstrate how to wear the pad that, we had developed. So we would make these little cardboard dolls, and the doll was named Sundari. And you would have the skirt, and then, you would lift the skirt up, and this is how the pad was kind of made. So we would have many Sundaris in our training hall. So I would have, like, say, 20 Sundaris like this, and you give it to each of the adolescents, and the exercise was make Sundari wear a pad. And it was like, for a lot of girls, it was practice because they hadn't yet got their period, and soon they would, get it. And then there was this initial, they were like initiated a little early. So at that point, I had my own design studio, and I was working with about 8 NGOs and working my way through 800 young people. And so I developed a range of products, range of communication product, which would be useful for trainers while they communicated for menstrual health and reproductive health. So this is something I've already shown you. Alongside, we made a, menstrual wheel that I kept out here. Anyway, when we get it, I'll just show that to you. Can we just see, can you see something round? Yeah, here we are. So it kind of went like that. So you could just, you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then when the window came in, you could read how your menstrual cycle sort of happened. So these were some of our efforts then. And as a designer, I've always believed in copyleft because we work in the social space, and we in the social space, it's not a good idea to keep copyright. So it gets disseminated, and I'm happy to say that over the years, even a UN agency picked up some of this work and got this translated into French and some other languages. WSCC, World Water Conservation, those people. So there's a big advantage to copyleft, and I've been a complete, propagator, promoter of copyleft, which of course goes against sort of commercial design. I mean, I understand that you can't copy left a washing machine or something, those kind of things. So we have a traditional storytelling narrative form, which we call the coward. It's basically a shrine, which is about, say, 8 to 18 inches high, with a lot of doors that open out. And in the traditional form, it's a narration. It's a narration of kings gone by and how they fought for their land, etc. It's also it could be used for genealogy. So it's called a cover, and we converted the cover to talk about adolescent reproductive health. What are the changes in the body as we grow? So while the cover worked very well in training scenarios, it was a heavy box. It was that big. So some of our trainers even sit down under a tree and work with young people. So we converted the thing into a portable format, which you all can see later. So it was designed in a very simple way. It had the traditional cover too works like this. So when you just open out a lot of these things, the whole picture just releases itself out. So I'll just show you an example. It just looks like that. So what happens is that you have the boys on one side and you have the girls on one side. And so if you're in a classroom with just boys, you would see how it's going, and then not open the girls' side at all, and vice versa. And then once the group gets comfortable, you would open out the whole thing, and then the whole thing comes out like that. And then you can open it out gradually. Like, what does a 6-year-old look like? What does So it was designed from the coward. It was designed in a portable way she happens to be a classmate of Dipti. So it's so those some of the things that went on. Now, if on the ground we were looking at in 2000, if we were looking at all these practices that I just spoke about, nothing really had changed by 2010 up to this decade. Some things changed, but yes, we were still working with all this. We were still working with, is there a place to change? Is there a place to wait? And then new things got added on. One of the things that got added on was garbage, because suddenly a lot of people had begun to use disposable pads because schools were giving them out. So we never had to talk about garbage, and now suddenly we have to speak about garbage. And in the rural context, we don't have a garbage removal system. In the cities, we have a truck that comes in and takes away our stuff, but that does not happen. Even supposing I live in a town called Udaipur, so you move away 50 kilometers from there is no garbage removal. So it's in the field, it's there, staring at you as you're walking by. And of course, it affects our fields. So when I mean a space for terminal disposal of reusable products, even now, we are iffy. If in New Delhi our garbage is being taken away, where is it going? It's going to a landfill. It's going to a landfill some kilometers away from Delhi. So there's been a lot of studies. You would know that because you might have, because Delhi had a lot of news about garbage some time back. And now we also have mobile phones. A lot of people have mobile phones. So we could, communicate through that, give information through that. So some of the things repeated, and then yet new things get added on. That's how it is anyway. You keep adding on as you move along. So when we move to the next decade, we had other NGOs coming in, other activists coming in, making cloth pads. We had a gentleman named Arunachalan Murunagan. Yeah. He's called the Pad Man of India. Yeah. And Pad Man of India came with a low-cost technology of disposable pads. So on one hand, I was so pleased that we had this guy on our team. On the other hand, I was not pleased because that's so much more garbage. So it's always two sides to the coin and never one straight thing. And this is true for everything, and of course, nothing is more true than it is for menstruation. Right. So again, we if you look at this list of what are the products people are using, people continue to use everything. It's from whether it's crushed newspaper, whether it's being isolated, everything changes, and as I said, new things got added. So around this time, there was Anandi Pads is another group that started to make compostable pads. So they said that our pads will compost within 3 months. But then again, we often argue with Jaideep, who is our ally and our friend, and we tell him that compostable How? Why? Because composting also needs a correct environment to compost. You can't just put it out there and hope for it to compost. And then if something is buried under, say, even 3 meters of garbage, where is it going to compost? So there are a lot of these things that went forward. So if you look at aspirational journeys of menstruators, that was critical in this decade. From cloth, people moved to the timepiece, which I had showed you in the morning. Some of you, if you want to see it later, it's just there. And I was very unhappy with the timepiece because of the nature of the material. It's warm, it's like a blanket, it's 42 degrees in Rajasthan, So I had all these problems. But menstruators love this because it just dries in 3 hours under the ceiling fan. So if you wash it, you don't have this problem of men going blind, etc., because it's dark. And you put it on the clothesline. It solved so many things in one go, and everyone still loves it. And this product came from Gujarat. So I could only talk to vendors who sold this. Excuse me. Nobody really knew how it started, how the practice started, but all they could say was, Gujarati vendors and traders told us that, this is what women use here, go sell it in Rajasthan. So they brought it to our state. And it's still thriving, and you get them in a variety of colors. And of course, then people love to move on to the disposable bag. Now, if you live in a congested kind of space with houses close to each other, then you will not have a place to throw your bag. So then you will probably use reusable. So it's where you live, where you are, what your surroundings are, what your circumstances are. There's just no one thing that, there's no one way. And then, of course, this is something you will all have read at some point. We did lots of audits about, how many pads do we use. And it just, we can just skip this because we were trying to help people to look at what they consume. So while all this was going on, it was time to rethink a few things. And so I converted that into a sort of PhD type of research. The pad was already kind of ready, but we were not very sure whether, what to do with it. So the best way we thought was let's get it into a PhD. And then, of course, I was a practitioner. And my goodness, it was terrible. And then, I didn't know maths, and it was just very difficult. And it was around this time that I met Anupriya, because one of the teachers in their college was my classmate from the design school where I studied. And that's how I met her, and we started talking about so many other things related to the subject. So I had a very, very smart guide who just understood my problem and understood that, okay, this woman is a practical woman, and let me just help her to put this in a sort of practical framework. So it will work for her, and it will work for the community that she works with. So he had a great role to play in how to move my work, which most guides do, which most guides have that very critical role. So essentially, we were looking at 3 things: underwear usage, the use of timepiece, the use of disposable pads, and then these 3 menstrual products were central to that larger inquiry. And we looked at 9 small studies. I won't go into that. It's just to share with you that these are some of the things we asked ourselves. How do we make menstruation management sustainable? How do we measure the sustainability? And how do we compare? Can we compare products? Can we compare systems? Can we compare 2 types of management methods? Can we compare, whether one is good for environment or the other is, not good? So we looked at, after a lot of churning, the obvious came out that there are 4 factors. There's environment, there's health, and there's economic factors, and there are social factors, and they govern this whole business of menstrual management. And luckily, we have Hindi words that match with all this. So it was PASS, PASS. So when the PASS model was sort of conceived, I shared it with Indrani, my friend. I said, I'm going to try this thing. We both had a good laugh. And then we had a coffee after that, and she said, good luck, and sent me off to meet the guide. And somehow it kind of worked out. And we worked out a very simple scoring system, 3-2-1 type of system, which I'll just share with you. So if you had, for example, you were comparing 3 devices, you just device 1, device 2, device 3, you just added those little things that are colored. And then you said, okay, if device number 3 has a score of 6, 7, 8, 9, so that's probably the best for us. That's how we work on it. And applying it absolutely at the ground, we just simply made 4 pillars in cardboard, and we said, okay, one is environment, one is health, one is social, and one is economic. And then we would have a little roof, and we place our product on the roof, and then the group would sit around it and say, okay, if we take away, is this product useful for us? Some would say, oh, great, just love disposable pads. Then someone would say, okay, what happens to the environment? Everybody agrees, yes, this is not good for the environment. So you take away one pillar. So visually, it's good for the community to then imagine in a way sustainability. So then, you remove economic pillar. Then if the pad is expensive, then you remove the economic pillar. Then you realize, oh, how unstable this is. So that's kind of how we worked with it. And then, of course, we had to do a proof of concept study. And then it was, of course, cleared by the ethics committee. And I was advised to take my trial away from my own home state, just to see how it would work in South India. Obviously, convenience, I am a South Indian, so I knew the southern languages. So from the west of India, I moved everything to the south, and a group there was making disposable pads. So we used their disposable pad, and we used our reusable pad. And the trial kind of ran for about 8 months, and we had about 51 participants in the trial. And this is just a little, just quick thing of what we did. And then we had a little record diary where all the participants would record, different things, different parameters that we had asked them to record for us over the 8 months. So each group got to try one disposable product and one reusable product. And they had all these questions to answer. And really, even in South India, you would have small spaces like this that would serve as your bathing area. And you would then hang your menstrual cloth in the corner, just kind of, not out on display. And if you didn't have a space to, if you didn't have a closed space to wash, you would just go to the water source, and then you would bring back the family clothing and your own pads in a tub, and then you again come back and hang it like that. So that's something that is still common. And then we also understood how quickly the pad that you just made in the morning, if it's in the rainy season, it just takes very long to dry, but in the summer it would just dry very quickly. Or you would just put it under the ceiling fan and it will go. Then we did small. I will just run through this because it doesn't have to be detailed for you all. We just looked at what was comfortable, what was not comfortable, who said what. And very interestingly, in South India, you have a stove where you heat your water for bathing. So everybody loved the disposable pad because they just put it into the stove, which of course it's bad for you because it's plastic burning in your area. But then it could be concealed so easily. So everybody loved loved throwing it into the stove. We call it hande vole in Kannada. So and then of course along with the palm fronds. So that was very interesting for me because we don't have that in the state where I work. And then we looked at itching, burning, boils. We looked at all that and then looked at some of the environmental issues and buried things. Of course, the polyester stuff, this just didn't biodegrade at all for almost 2 years. It was just like that, and of course, cotton cloth very quickly biodegraded. But if you looked at a disposable napkin, it kind of disintegrated, but it was still there. I could still piece it together, and you knew it was a pad. So we worked. These had to be practical because it was a practice-based thing, and I wanted my whole community to be involved. So it doesn't sort of fit into the conventional, maybe in the conventional type of quantitative research, or as you all would know. So when we looked at packing materials, we looked at all that, and then we made this score. So Again, just to remind you all that it had to be for the community, so that's why it was so simple. Okay, so now the same list continues from all these 20 years, and then currently we have multiple organizations making devices to manage in India. You know, whether it's cloth pads, whether it's cups, whether it's period panties, the list just goes on, and we have multiple organizations working in menstrual health. Moving on, so let's keep moving on. So what else? So there are lots of little things we do to break silence. If you would come into a training hall and at the end of the day, you would make your own bracelet of 28 beads, and you would pick, you are asked to pick red beads corresponding to the number of days that you bleed, and the rest is, the rest remaining. Like let's say, if you're bleeding for 7 days, you would have 7 red beads and the rest would be another color. So this was what we started long back in 2012, and we take an oath that we will, break silence on menstruation. We'll talk about it. We'll fight for our rights, etc., etc. So that's something that I thought we would share. What are the other things we've done? Because it's like it's a movement. It's like the wind. It has to go. It has to be organic. So we had this young person called Sadhvi, who was at that time a student, and then my NGO supports a lot of design graduation projects. We support summer internships, and so and remember, this was a time where we didn't have 3D printing, so maybe now she would have designed it better. These are just slates, and then with clay, she had done these tactile kind of things on, it was all about awareness and menstruation. And Kahani Har Mahine Ki is translated to story every month. And then she had this this torso kind of thing. I don't know if you call it the torso, but this bottom half of a figure. And you could she designed it in a way where you could actually put a tampon in. You could take out the underwear and put a tampon in. So she would have a bunch of these visually impaired girls, getting them to paste a sanitary napkin onto the underwear and then make this model wear the underwear and so on. And then, unfortunately, as an NGO, we didn't take it further because, we also have plenty of other things to do. And I didn't really work my way through that. Then we have people just wanting to do communication projects. So this was another example of, she made things around men in menstruation, which is a poster I will be sharing with Anupriya and Alia and Julian later, which is probably will be on display later this week. Then we have this young student from the Glasgow Soda Part who would come in between, and she said she was very interested in making a washing machine, and her time at the institute was very small. So I said, think small, take one person, don't think big washing machine. So she made a hand operated little thing that you could use to wash your cloth pad. And now you get these little portable thingies. I just saw the other day. It's such a cool thing. It's just this small. You just plug it in, and then your pads can get nicely washed. I mean, of course, you can put it in the regular wash too. You must put it in the regular wash. Yeah. Okay. Then from Anupriya's college and Sarah and Asra's college, we had these young ladies working for us, and they put together a booklet on, other bodies can also bleed. So it was a Know Your Menstruator booklet. It was bilingual. It was in Hindi and English, and it was a summer project for all of them. And we had a lot of these printed, and it went on Instagram, and it was relevant then. Now, of course, lots of things have changed, and we also have need to re-look at some of the products that we've made. We also had other interesting projects, like, for example, one was with the Accor Hospitality Group in France. They have a simple competition for students. So I was mentoring this group of students, and they came up with their own research and understood the discards from a typical 5-star hotel. And then we converted the linen into cloth pads. The project unfortunately didn't take off, but yes, these are also possibilities, and these things will also, we can also look at some of these issues. Okay. One thing that I am quite was a very difficult project for me was working in jails. Also, working with incarcerated women, you don't really have much time with them. You would, with great difficulty, you negotiate 2.5 hours, 3 hours with with the government. So they let you come into the women's cell and speak about menstruation because in the women's cell you have disposable pads and you also have cloth pads. So we were looking at how you know how women can after they leave after their time is over in these incarcerated spaces, how they can get out and maybe start their own something, or it was just designed as a awareness 2.5 hour awareness workshop. So really, what comes out of these, we really don't know because we don't never go back to check. It's just hearsay for us after that. So, and then currently, what I'm working on, I'm just working on a graphic novel that traces the journey, that traces all the menstrual products that have happened in India. It's a long project. As you can see, I've already had so many designers working for me, and it's just going at a snail's pace. And I hope that I'll finish it within the next 6 months. So I'm like halfway there. And I've just brought samples to show you later when we sort of, when we get up and walk around a bit. So that's what I'm working on. And aside from everyday work, I do pottery. And I said, I have to make a pad in clay. So I just made these two things in clay. So, yeah. So I kept the presentation short so we could, have more time to chat. Then, so that's kind of a little bit of what I wanted to share.